Hello and welcome to Birkbeck Science Week. I'm Nick Keith, I'm the Executive Dean of the School of Science. I do hope you can all stay to the Rosalind Franklin lecture by Professor Elspeth Garland at 7 o'clock this evening. But first we have our Athena Swan panel, Inspiring Women in Science. And without further ado, I will pass you over to the chair, Dr. Belinda Brooks-Gordon, who is the Assistant Dean for Qualities within the School of Science. Belinda?
Good afternoon, and thank you everybody for coming. There comes a point in all of these women's lives where they knew that science was the path they wanted to follow, whether that was in childhood or during their studies. So we want them to tell you, for about 5 minutes each, the point in their life at which that happened and what led to it, and then we'll go over to take questions from all of you and hear from you as well. So first of all, we'll hear from Professor Hilary Downs.
Okay, I'm a geologist and I also work in planetary science. I've always been interested, at least I think I've always been interested in astronomy and that kind of thing, and I think that was probably because I'm so old that I remember the moon landing. So the moon landing was clearly something that really inspired a huge number of people to go into science, whether it was necessarily earth science or planetary science or any other kind of science that's required to put a man on the moon. And that was really the beginning of thinking, ooh, this is exciting. I mean, it was the excitement, I think, that made me get interested. I was also at a school that encouraged science right from as you went into the school at the high school at age 11. There was science classes, and then there were full chemistry and physics and maths classes. And I'd also had to do a bit of biology, so covered it all. But the other thing that was very interesting at that very same time, about 69, 70, was that, like in biology, when Charles Darwin published the theory of evolution, it revolutionised people's ideas about biology. Well, we had the same sort of revolution in geology and geophysics, and it's called plate tectonics. And prior to somewhere in the mid-60s, geology was a very bitty subject. There was no underlying theme, no underlying theory that linked it all. You had oceans, and you had continents, and you didn't, they'd always been in the same place, which is kind of strange because we knew for sure that they had changed in their climate. You can spot that in the rocks. But we didn't know why climate had changed. And we, even looking back in hindsight, you can probably figure out that the whole of the Atlantic Ocean, if you closed it up, it would more or less fit. But nobody had a mechanism, that was called continental drift. Nobody had a mechanism to make that work. They had no idea about how you split essentially North America from Europe and South America from Africa, how you split those continents apart and what it is that happens to make them split. And all of that was being discussed and debated and at that time, and it was just starting to filter down onto things like Scientific American, which was very nice. We had a copy of Scientific American delivered to the school, and we all read it. And there were things like that going on where it was explained in simple terms that a 15-year-old can understand. It was a very exciting time. And then I decided I wanted to be a geophysicist. They were the most exciting people because they were making all this plate tectonic stuff. And I thought it would be a useful thing to do a bit of this geology on the side because there were, obviously geology was quite important in this geophysics, and my school, you can tell what kind of school it was, had a thing called recreational O-levels. That's GCSE at 16, recreational ones. So Italian was one of them, and geology was one. And so I bottled along to these geology classes, and I discovered that was just amazingly eye-opening. It was literally, I was looking at worlds that had, our planet, that had existed previously. Times when the planet was warm, and you had huge rainforests and strange animals, dinosaurs, of course. And it was all that then made me think, okay, I'm going to put the two together, geology and geophysics. And when I got to university to study geology and geophysics, I discovered that my maths wasn't quite up to the geophysics. It was okay, but it was not the really top level of maths that you need to be a geophysicist. And besides, by this stage, I just got so excited about the geology, and that was it. I think one of the things was that I could go out into the field. I could actually go and see these things in action. So we would go into the Lake District or north of England or Scotland, and you could see what it is that the textbook said this. Go and see it, and I really enjoyed sort of getting out and getting. Okay, you get wet, getting a bit wet and dirty, but it was that was fun.
Thank you, Hilary. Gosh, I feel as if you've taken us there. And next we're going to hear from Dr. Clare Sansom, and Clare's science journalist, an editor and part-time lecturer here at Birkbeck.
Okay, well, thank you very much. The story of how I got to the rather strangely not quite academic place that I am today takes me into my 30s, so it's a bit slightly more personal than the extraordinary sort of enthusiasm about geology and geophysics that we've just heard. I can't remember a time when I wasn't interested in science. And I had a chemistry set, I loved dinosaurs. I remember the moon landing because I was, I think, a touch younger. So I wasn't sort of didn't mean as much to me. But I do remember them, and by the time I reached the age of about 15, I wanted to be a doctor, as I suppose do a lot of sort of scientifically minded, intelligent, motivated teenage girls. And that didn't last beyond O-level biology and being introduced to the dissection of a rat and discovering that I was both clumsy and squeamish. I still think that I might have made a good, decent enough best of being a GP, but I would never have got anywhere near medical qualification without surgery. So that was that. The next thing that happened that was to my career was my then physics teacher. I was a fairly traditional girls' grammar school, which had certain advantages, like we were told we could do anything if it was triple maths or whatever, which it had certain disadvantages, like no careers education. They just assumed their girls were going to get there. And we were encouraged to do Oxbridge, but that was about it. And yes, I did Oxbridge, but I failed. But in the middle of all this, I met Mrs. Harrison, our physics teacher, who was a tiny, dynamic, down-to-earth Yorkshire woman, 5 foot nothing tall, brilliant sense of humour. She could make anything. A-level lesson on dimensions. Fun. Half our year from the A-level physics class, including me, went to uni to study physics. And that was a bit of a shock because I discovered in my first year class that we girls were 8 out of 80, which was a pretty low ratio even for the early 1980s. I chose as a PhD subject, I really decided that I wanted to do a PhD as soon as I started loving Bristol. But I chose actually computational biophysics, or bioinformatics as it became. If any of you were here for Maya's lecture, that subject, because it was linked to the medicine that had been my first love, and also it didn't involve experiments, and I wasn't going to trash any expensive kit. So, having got my PhD, I did 3 postdocs, which was probably too many. By halfway through postdoc number 3, I was actually getting rather frustrated. I was applying for positions as a principal investigator, running my own research group. I wasn't getting anywhere with them. To be honest, I didn't really want one, and it took me a remarkably long time to work out why. If I had actually thought through my trajectory up to that point a little bit in more depth, I would have realised earlier that actually talking about science infuses me a lot more than doing it. Yes. And yes, I was always one of those postdocs for whom the research in the lab down the corridor was more interesting than my own. So after postdoc number 3, I threw caution to the winds, decided that I was going to try and go it alone as a teacher, as a university lecturer part-time, and as a science writer and editor. So I started asking people for contracts, and by that stage I was already writing for the Biochemist, which is the trade magazine of the Biochemical Society. I had the immense good fortune to run into David Moss, then Professor of Crystallography here, who was introducing the Principles of Protein Structure course, distance education course in structural biology. He needed some help develop it. He took me on, and 18 years later, I'm still here part-time. And I've made a pretty good fist of the writing and editing, and I teach for the Open University. A lot more of my writing is now online than it used to be, but I still write for the front parts of top-end journals from time to time. Interestingly, the 15-year-old who wanted to be a doctor is now a 50-something who regularly writes for the Lancet. And that's me.
Thank you very much, Claire. That's not. Our next speaker is Dr. Iroise Dumontheil. Is that how you pronounce it? I've heard her before. We worked at the same part for many years. And Iroise is a reader in cognitive neuroscience.
Yes. Hello everyone. So I don't really remember a time where I did not like science, but in a way I kind of liked everything. But I was one of the girls playing with mechanos and kind of radio controlled cars and things like that. And it feels like I always wanted to keep all the subjects for as long as I could. And I thought it was quite interesting to hear about the influence of teachers and the school, because I think that's really true. If you don't have this good teachers that are interesting, exciting, or if your school doesn't really push or favour a particular science subject, then it's probably not going to be something you do. But in France, there's kind of choice between 3 curriculum: literature, economy, social sciences, and science. And basically, the science one, if you're quite a good student, is the one you do. So it's kind of implied that, except if you're really, really into literature, you just do science. And so that I thought it was really good for me, really easy, because that meant I could keep all those kind of really interesting subjects, as well as languages, which is something quite different here in the UK, where you have to pick 3 A-levels, and I would have hated that, having to choose just 3 A-levels, because I had, I think, something like 8 to 10 subjects at baccalaureate, and which covered pretty much everything, and I really enjoyed that. And so after that, I decided to trying to keep a bit the same. So I stayed between coming to England to do a year of in a school as a kind of language assistant, or to do science. And I was told that you can do science and then language. But if you do language, then it's very hard to switch to science. So I decided to start with the harder bit, apparently, and did science. And again, kept all the subjects, which meant biology, chemistry, physics, and maths. And if I dropped anything, it would have been the only choice was to drop biology, and I didn't want to drop that one. And after that, it feels like it's all kind of random decisions a bit, and who you meet and who might tell you something about something. And once I started this kind of quite broad science curriculum, I discovered that it only led to engineering schools in agronomy and like agriculture, making like tins and stuff in farms. And I didn't really, and I heard people like breaking their ankles running after goats, and I thought, people would do that. And so there's only kind of a couple of colleges I could get into after that was not this type of very applied biological engineering. And I managed to get into one of those and did kind of biological engineering, or kind of genetics mostly. And then discovered I was less interested in the details of what a cell does, partly because going back to kind of talking about it to people, I really felt it very frustrating that I couldn't talk about it to people, because it felt like people needed to have a whole kind of understanding of DNA and how the cell works, and if they didn't have that, they couldn't understand if I talked about one particular protein. And I really did not find that exciting. So I kind of tried to move away from it as much as I could, and my summer project was in Australia looking at the behaviour of kangaroos. And my supervisors at kind of back at the college weren't very interested, weren't very impressed by what I did compared to everyone who had a very complex title with loads of proteins and interactions. And then I enjoyed Erasmus. I don't know if some of you are aware of this kind of European exchange program, which meant that because I was away for a year, I could kind of pick the stuff I wanted to do at Imperial. And then the big decision was kind of the master's level. I had a choice between, at that point I decided I really wanted to study the brain, partly because I thought it was exciting, that there's loads of things we didn't know about. I forgot to say what I do, but I'll get to that. And there's kind of a whole range of things that would have been interesting. And there was a choice between a master's in neuroscience and a master's in cognitive sciences. And that was kind of a bit random again. A friend of mine, another student, he was going to go for the master in neuroscience, he told me, I think you prefer the other one. And he was right. I definitely preferred the one which was more about kind of psychology, mental state, how you think, how we behave, how we interact with other people, rather than thinking about recording a single brain cell and seeing what this single brain cell is doing. Again, because you can talk about people about understanding and your emotions and how you think when another person is thinking, but if you start talking about kind of neurons, brain cells and the interactions, then you lose people a lot quicker. So in terms of, it wasn't a big theory that influenced me, it was more my research, is more the fact that we've got these scanners, magnetic resonance imaging scanners, that enable us to look into people's brain. And that's kind of a key tool in my research. And I look into adult brains and adolescent brain and try to see what's the difference between the two in a whole range of contexts.
Thank you. Insight into the table. And our penultimate speaker is Dr. Diane Horn, a reader in coastal geomorphology at Birkbeck.
So I have probably the most unusual background. My first degree is in history, my master's degree is in earth science, and then my doctorate is in geography, physical geography. And it's not quite as unusual a path as you think, but I come from a long line of engineers. My grandfather was an electrical engineer, my father was a chemical engineer, all of my uncles were engineers, all of my male cousins are engineers. My favorite subject in high school was calculus, and yet nobody ever suggested that I consider science or engineering as a major. Many years later, when I ended up working with coastal engineers and research a lot, I said to my dad, why didn't you ever suggest this to me? And he said, well, because you were a girl. In those days, girls weren't encouraged to do science. So I went off, I did a first degree in history. Of course, the big advantage of the liberal arts education in the US is that you have to do a science subject, science or math, you have to do social science, you have to do humanities, no matter what your major is. I started out with the sort of good girl subject of biology and discovered that I hated it. So, sorry, my biology colleagues. And so I picked up 2 maths classes instead, fulfilled my requirement, and went on picking and choosing things until my senior year, my final year, I did a course in geology. And it was physical geology. And like Hilary, you got to go out into the field and see how these physical forces shape the landscape. And I thought, this is really interesting. And it's easier. I found it much more sort of compatible with the way that I thought. I then went off and I taught school. I taught 8th grade, which is 13-year-olds, earth science in an inner city school in Norfolk, Virginia. It was a tough school. There was a murder my first day in the school. We had armed security guards in the hall. And they were very disadvantaged students. And when I had been there for a few years, I took the students on a field trip to NASA at Langley, which is on the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay. And when we came back, I picked up a whole bunch of brochures about potential jobs. And one of them was for a job as a geographer. I'd never even thought of geography as a possible job. To most Americans, it's naming the countries and their capitals. But it seemed to me that the physical geography could bring together both the history side of things and the earth science side of things. And so when I started my PhD, I thought that I was going to look at historical evidence for coastal change. And I actually got much more interested in the physics of shallow water waves. And I had done oceanography, astronomy, meteorology, and geology. I liked all of them, but what I really liked was where geology and oceanography interacted at the beach. I also thought, if I'm going to do field work somewhere, I would like to do it on the beach. Although, if I had a bit more sense, I would have done coral beaches. And so therefore, I could have done field work on warm beaches rather than cold, wet British beaches. I did my PhD on the Isle of Man, which was both cold and wet. I had eventually figured out how to get funding to work on beaches in Australia, which is, I think, much more useful. So what I do now is a combination of 2 things. One is, again, looking very closely at physical processes on beaches and measuring shallow water waves and looking at sediment transport. For that, I started moving into slightly more applied things where we were looking at the impact of these processes on managed beaches, particularly on the South Coast. And then as I've gone on, I felt that I wanted to do something a bit more applied. And so now I'm working on flooding and cities at risk of flooding from sea level rise and adaptation to floods, which in a way has sort of brought me back a little bit to the history part that I've done before. I think that, as I said, the big advantage is if you get exposed to a lot of things when you're younger, you have the opportunity to at least have a go at it. And I think that the American system is probably more open to that. I was only accepted provisionally on the master's, but I did well enough that they let me continue. And of course, the nice thing about being in the geography department is that it could be pretty much anything. So I can do the straightforward science, I can do the applied science, I can do the policy side of things, and it all fits into whatever it is that we call geography. So I think that if I had known now if I'd known when I started what I was going to end up doing now, I certainly would have paid a lot more attention in my physics class in school, and I would have tried to get through it understanding as opposed to just memorizing and learning. And like Hilary, I think I reached a point where my physics and maths had sort of, this was the stage beyond which I was not going to be able to go. My solution to that has been to collaborate with engineers and very good modelers. I wrote a model for my PhD, showed that I could do it, and now I feel no need to reinvent the wheel. And of course, one of the wonderful things is these days you can collaborate with people around the world and put together groups of people with skills that you may not necessarily have. And I think with the big problems that are facing us as our climate changes, and particularly sea level rise, that's important. The project that I'm just finishing up now is with an engineering company called ARIC, and what we're doing is a toolbox to advise cities what to do when they face a major flood risk as sea level rises. And I've been writing the adaptation bit. Once you know you've got a problem, where it's going to be, when it's going to be a problem, what are we going to do? And I think there will probably be no shortage of work in that field in the future.
Yes, unfortunately, I think you're right. So, I must set the timer for myself, because that would not be abuse of the chair, wouldn't it? Well, my story is that I was an expat brat, so lots of different schools, which causes lots of gaps in your education, but also it's good for skills. You make friends very easily, and my partner, who's a Navy brat, it does mean we're terrible if we take people out to dinner. We just work the room. We're used to it. When we don't know we've got guests, we need to look after them. But the school and growing up was a series of closed doors. I can remember being interested in law and being told at my traditional grammar school that law's very hard for girls. What about being a legal secretary? And there was, unless your dad was a doctor and you wanted to do medicine, it was secretary, teacher, nurse at this very academic Catholic grammar school in North West Manchester. So, and I wanted to do a combination of A-levels. That wasn't allowed either. It had to be sciences or arts, not a combination of both. So I ended up leaving at 16. The school had also gone comprehensive, so that it was all drama. Instead of doing Latin and classics, suddenly typewriters were imported and little boys and all sorts of strange things. So I left and did a medical secretarial course, and I lasted 3 weeks as a medical secretary, partly because of the way the medical students spoke to these lovely secretaries, these very able, sensible women who were being treated like dirt. And I felt a little bit like Esther in the bell jar, that instead of transcribing somebody else's thrilling letters, I wanted to write my own letters. So I ended up doing beauty therapy, which was the only other thing I was interested in, always having melted down lipsticks and made my own makeup in various countries. And so I did beauty therapy while I was initially putting down time until I could go and do chiropody, because they wouldn't take you until you were 18 doing chiropody. But I really enjoyed beauty therapy. I loved the social side of it, and I ended up working in department stores in Selfridges and then in Harrods, and running the beauty salon in Harrods, and then opening my own salon in Chigwell. And very good money, very good living, but I got bored. And I was constantly reading in the salon. They used to call me Diane out of Cheers. There was a program on the TV at the time, and a barmaid who was constantly talking books. And so, you know, unlike some people who might have, I don't know, hiding some trashy magazine, you know, inside some worthy book, and I was the opposite. I would have Dostoevsky hidden inside Hello magazine. So I'd read it. What do you read? So and then having children was a really critical point for me, because I became so fascinated by them and their development. I've never having been interested in children before, but of course my own were absolutely fascinated. And then reading Penelope Leach, and then wanting to know more. Why? Why did they do this? Why did they? And so that led me to an Access course. And from the Access course, we had a couple of tutors there who were so inspirational and motivational and can-do, and so we all went on open days, and I picked Middlesex Poly because they took children in the creche from under 2. So then at Middlesex Poly, I had the good luck to be taught by some other inspirational lecturers. One was Lynn Siegel, who's now here, but also a couple of tutors. I would have stayed at Middlesex. I was very happy, very safe, didn't think I would be able to do it, but ended up coming top, and you know. And a couple of, they'd been to Cambridge, and they said, go to Cambridge, you'll outgrow this place. And I thought, well, to me, Cambridge was for people growing grouse moors, not for the likes of me. But I thought, well, if they think I can do it, perhaps I can. So I went and had a look, and I did like the look of it. And so I wrote back and I said, oh, well, Cambridge looks interesting, and there's even a place for women, mature women students as well, Lucy Cavendish College. And I said this to the tutors, and one of them said, oh, Lucy, you can do better than Lucy Cavendish. No offence to anybody who went to Lucy Cavendish, but there was a league table. Again, this I didn't know, it was opening other worlds to me. I didn't know there was a league table of colleges. So I ended up applying to a science college, to Churchill, and did my PhD there as a forensic psychologist. So it was still a mix of arts and sciences. It still incorporated law that I'd originally been interested in. And that's one of the things that that led me here to Birkbeck. It's one of the reasons that I love teaching mature students and letting them know that science, you need science in order to be able to predict behaviour. But I shall stop there, open it out, so because I want to hear your reflections and your stories, and any questions that you have for our panel to see the themes between. Questions and comments? Yep, I'll take one and then over here. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask you to say your name just first? Would that be all right?
Yes,
Okay.
my name is Kim Husbands. I've been married. And I want to ask about two things really. One, I'm sorry, what lady that's to your, yes.
Diane?
Diane,
Yeah.
sorry Diane. When you mentioned about the coral reefs and things of that nature, right? Was there anyone with you that was studying as to why all of them are dying so and blanching out and all the life is dying off those coral reefs? And also if any of you have any advice, as because I'm one of those mature students, of how to go from the vertical of admin work and transition through laboratory work into environmental science. And those are my two questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not going to let you answer yet. I'm going to take that question as well.
It wasn't a question, just saying I went to one of those, an all-girls grammar school, and we had to choose between streams, and was told you can't do biology with art subjects. I didn't get on with physics and chemistry, but I was not allowed to do the biology.
We're lucky.
Absolutely, it's my back. So Dan, if you answer first and then both reflections and then we'll take them.
Okay, so Kim, your first question was about the coral reefs, and I personally haven't worked on that, but I have been fortunate to do a lot of work with people at the University of Queensland in Australia. And there is a group there that's probably one of the world leading ones who are looking at the impacts of climate change on coral. And obviously one of the big ones is temperature. Once the water temperatures increase above a certain point, the coral dies. But also they're looking at the sedimentation, because when you get either big storms or a lot of sediment that's released from mining, that smothers the coral as well too. And so I have been fortunate enough to go on field trips with people working on that, but it hasn't really been my area. But again, I can give you the names of people there. The second question about sort of moving as a mature student, I think that often women tend to doubt themselves and not try things because they think they can't do it, whereas I've been told by some of my male colleagues that men think, well, I might be able to do this, let's have a go. I was lucky that when I applied for the master's, for example, I didn't have a science degree, and they accepted me provisionally. In fact, I wasn't even doing the master's initially, I was just picking up courses to get a teaching qualification, and then I did so well that they said, why not stay and do a master's? And I think certainly here at Birkbeck, I run an MSc in Environmental Sustainability, and we do take people with really very different backgrounds who want to move into that field. So I think the main thing is identifying if you've got the time to do it and where they're doing the sorts of things that you're interested in, and then have a go. I think a lot of people don't think they can do it and probably could if they try.
I just want to know, like, it's important to know where to go to do all these things. That's the...
Again, it depends. If you want to do research, and this was something I didn't realize as an American coming over here, is that if you want to do research on a particular topic, you should go to some place where people are actively researching that. With hindsight, Oxford was not a good place to do my DPhil because there wasn't really anybody postal there. I ended up getting a second supervisor at Royal Holloway to do the real science stuff. So from a research point of view, that's the key thing. From a master's point of view, you want to look at the places that teach a range of subjects that you're interested in and that fit in with you geographically and time constraints as well too.
Claire, have you got any comments to make? Either one can point, or the point there about arts and sciences.
The point about arts and sciences, it just reminded me something else that could possibly have, if I thought about it, stopped me doing those 3 postdocs and not getting into what I really wanted to do until my mid-30s, was that when I was an A-level student, I wanted to add English literature to my portfolio of A-levels, and I wasn't allowed. Which, in hindsight, I'm not particularly disappointed, because for what I do now, I need biology as well as physics, chemistry, and maths. But I wouldn't have been able to add another subject. But it's just interesting with the way that language and literature has always been a big part of my life as well. It's interesting just how many people on this panel have had the same experience.
Well, okay, here's my same experience. I wanted to do an extra A-level. I wanted to do Russian language, because we'd already done 5 years of Russian up to O-level. And I was told, absolutely not. You have to do if you're going to do something as difficult as physics, chemistry and maths, you mustn't distract yourself. Despite the fact I was being distracted by the geology O-level. Recreation, you remember. No, I wasn't, and I could only make, the timetable was set up, I suspected. At the time I thought it was, it was basically to get at me. I could only go to 1 class in Russian a week, which is Russian literature. So yes, I had the same experience, that I wanted to be broader, and I was actually told that I had to be narrower. You're just looking.
This is the moral of the story. The moral of the story is go to school in another country.
Yes.
Or maybe in here, I think you can say that the IB is like a new kind of international baccalaureate. There is some choice to be made, but I think you have more freedom in terms of kind of few, not just like those 3 key ones. And so for people who are kind of considering that, I think that can be an alternative without having to move to another country. Having kind of maybe broader high school kind of topics. My niece is doing that, and I was actually surprised that she had, at a high level, she had theatre, English literature and biology, which is kind of, and I like kind of the mixture, but I was quite impressed that was quite an impressive kind of range of things.
Kim, I'm keen to ask you, when you say about admin into what you want to do, what is it that you want to go into from?
Well, I know that environmental sciences is very broad.
Yeah.
I was thinking along the lines of waste management,
Yeah.
or even something along the lines of ecology. I'm thinking those 2 things are things that I'm kind of interested in.
And is that the science of it, or is it management and further admin?
I think as long as I can use the skills I already have,
Yeah.
and kind of integrate them into the things I'm interested in and earn a good living, I will be satisfied. I don't want to put any bridges on, because I know that a lot of these things interlink, and I know that I don't want to put any caps on where things kind of flow and go in the future. But the kind of work I'm doing now does not incorporate any of that. And every time I try to get into a lab, there's always a block, because all the entry-level positions are taken up by people who, kind of know someone and get in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really hard.
So then in that case, my advice, I mean, it does seem as if one of the things that's coming out here are sort of forks in the road where people have to make a decision whether it's A-levels or the back, and, for those where there are options, to keep those options, yeah. Going back to Esther in the bell jar a bit with all those pigs on the tree. But because it does make me wonder about, we mentioned Athena Swan before the panel, but also the Australian network and other admin routes and management routes, if that was something you're interested in doing. But if it's through who you know in the lab, then it's a question of also giving those, and Also, it's useful for us to know, because we're busy trying to get mentors for women so that it's not happenstance and who you know, so that people can have those routes and those mentors. But also people moving from admin, making that transition over for maybe voluntary work in a lab to learn it and to get to know people. I mean,
So I was working, I was told if I worked in the NHS for a while, that said they promote from within that you can move on. As not the case.
One of the things
let me just go back to the panel again, Dan. So hold that thought a second so that we can hear from some others. And because there may be other similar things to come back to and address. So other comments, reflections, questions? Yeah, we'll go front and then behind you.
My name's Emma. It's just to follow on from that really, in terms of you shared your experience of how you've got to your careers to date. In terms of opportunities for people coming into study, regardless of their age, do you think there are more opportunities for women now compared to the experiences that you had of, no, you can't do this subject, or do you think that's changing, and do you think that will continue to go?
Oh, good question. And then the question there just behind.
It was just a note to Kim really, just to say that I'm in quite a similar position. So I've worked in banking for the last 6 years, and I'm just 3 years into my BSc in psychology undergrad. I found it quite hard as well, but I've tried to do quite a lot of volunteering, and I think that opens quite a lot of doors. So here at Birkbeck, you can volunteer in some of the labs.
See, I wouldn't even mind volunteering as long as it could fit in with work. If I could volunteer and work at the same time, not a problem. But the work is in a sole household, not like a dual household or student household or parent household. It's only you. So if you don't make the income, there is no income. So if you use your 9 to 5 hours to make income to live, when do you volunteer? That's
really long days. I work at 7 this morning and
I don't mind volunteering at night or weekends, but every lab you call, we don't do nights and weekends. Yes.
Very good point. Okay, I'm going to start with this end. I'll start with Hilary, and we'll just work across with are there more opportunities now or not for women?
I think there are. Last night we had a presentation by a mature student who came to us having started a family at a very silly early age. And she'd worked in as an accountant, not an accountant, as a payroll manager for many years. And then she had decided that she was kind of interested in astronomy and went to do the UCL certificate in astronomy. Then heard about our planetary science BSc, came and did that and aced every single class. Even though she sat very quietly at the back, never said a thing, she was always on the ball. And then she was selected to be one of our teaching. It was not exactly a teaching assistantship.
So clearly qualifications, sometimes that then proves to others that you can do it. And I'll allow one more because we really run out of time, unfortunately. It's awful just when we're getting going. So I'm going to go to this side, either Claire or Diane. Who would like to reply? Go on to fight for it.
I was going to say that one of the things in terms of moving into the environmental field is that you can get associate membership of the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment. A number of courses are masters, that's part of the masters. They also have standalone courses. And that qualification is increasingly being recognized so that people will come into the environmental field, do something completely different, get the IHEMA qualification, and then you have a network of people, and it also helps to get you jobs. And we've had a couple of sessions where students who've moved into that field have come back and talked to our students, and they've also said that employers are increasingly looking on LinkedIn. So if you have a good LinkedIn profile and show that you've got an IHEMA qualifications, they actually contact people sometimes.
And Twitter to make contact with people. I think there are more opportunities for women at some levels. So where there are some organisations knowing that they have gaps, they're looking to recruit, on various boards and what have you, but in many others, without the organisations themselves making changes and really trying to address structural imbalances and historical imbalances, those, the opportunities won't be equal yet. And you do have to make the choices that fit in with your life circumstances. I couldn't do a postdoc. I knew, by then my marriage had broken up after my PhD, and I knew I had to have a 10-year post. So I knew that was important to me because I had to, keep the roof over my head. So it wasn't an option to do that 3-year thing, so it does have to fit in with your circumstances. There are so many things wrapped in with the themes that we've already heard between careers advice or lack thereof, whether postdocs, PIs, and the happenstance of people that you meet and the various curriculum choices going back. I mean, there's lots of themes and lots of questions, and if we can still be a resource, please don't hesitate to contact me. That's part of my role. I'll field questions from colleagues with expertise and try and feedback with help and advice, and we'll be putting on more events like this, so please do get involved and come along, because we do want to nurture good women scientists here in Birkbeck. So finally, I will thank our panel, Claire, Diane, Hilary and Iroise. I'll also thank Nick Keep, our forward-thinking Dean, who is fantastic, who without this, Birkbeck would be a less equal place, I feel, in the sciences. And also thank Mary Claire Halsworth, whose idea this panel was, and she did a lot of behind the work with Pauline Jones advertising it. So thank you all. The next event is at 7 o'clock with the Professor Elspeth Garman and the special lecture, the first. So thank you.
Thank you.